Hello everyone! Let's think for a moment. Imagine the most powerful empire of its time, the Mongol Empire, which had conquered almost all of Asia, trying twice in a row to take an island and failing? Today, we're going to take a deep dive into history and see what really happened that stopped the Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan's grandson Kublai Khan from conquering Japan in the 13th century. It's a fantastic story of resistance, strategy, and of course, those famous divine winds. Alright, let's go back to the 13th century. The Mongols were truly at the peak of their power. Kublai Khan first conquered Goryeo, which is modern-day Korea, and then he set his sights on Japan, which, well, seemed like the next logical step. He sent envoys several times with letters demanding that the Japanese surrender. But Japan at the time was run by the Kamakura shogunate, although the real power was in the hands of the regents from the Hojo clan, and they just flat out said no. And well, saying no to the Mongol Khan usually had bad consequences. So when diplomacy failed, Kublai Khan said, "Attack!" And that's how the first invasion began in the year 1274. The Japanese, led by Hojo Tokimune, the regent, realized things were serious and quickly started preparing their defenses, building forts and walls. Now, what was the Mongol force like? Don't think they were all Mongols. No, it was a mixed army of Mongols, Chinese, Jurchens, and of course Koreans who had been forced to help. About 900 ships set off from Korea towards Japan. Just imagine that, 900 ships! They first went for the closer islands, Tsushima and Iki. There was some resistance there. For example, the commander of Tsushima, Sosuke Kune, fought hard, but in the end they were defeated and the islands fell. The Mongol tactics were very strange to the samurai. You see, the samurai were used to fighting in almost one-on-one combat, something like duels. But the Mongols didn't fight like that at all. Their military formations were very tight, and they attacked in groups. They had also brought something new with them, handheld explosive bombs. Yes, bombs, back then. They called them tetsuhou. It was a kind of ceramic grenade filled with gunpowder and iron shrapnel. They would throw these into the middle of the Japanese ranks. The sound was terrifying. They caused casualties, and most importantly, they spooked the samurai's horses and made them bolt. In short, they were very effective. In the main battle, which took place in Hakata Bay and is also known as the Battle of Bunei, the Mongols were successful at first and pushed the Japanese back. The beach practically fell into their hands. But then something important happened. One of their main generals, a Chinese man named Liu Fuxiang, was badly wounded. This incident, along with the exhaustion of their troops and dwindling supplies, led the Mongols to make a mistake. They were worried that the Japanese would attack them at night with small boats, so they decided to retreat to their ships to regroup. And this was the worst possible decision, because right at that moment, a terrifying and sudden storm began. A storm that the Japanese would later call Kamikaze, meaning divine wind. This storm tore the Mongol fleet to pieces. Many of their ships were flat-bottomed riverboats, not built for the rough sea. A lot of ships sank, and thousands of soldiers died. Those who survived saw that there was nothing more they could do and returned to Korea, wounded and defeated. The first invasion was a complete failure, thanks to a big help from nature. But the Japanese knew the Mongols wouldn't give up that easily. So in the few years they had, they frantically strengthened their coastal defenses. Their most important project was building a very long stone wall called the Genko Porui, a 20-kilometer wall along the coast of Hakata Bay. It was a massive engineering feat designed to prevent the next Mongol force from landing. On the other side, Kublai Khan wasn't idle either. He had now conquered all of southern China and had far more resources. He was preparing a much larger army, this time with two fleets, a smaller fleet from Korea and a massive fleet from southern China. This time, things were much more serious. It's interesting that Kublai sent envoys again, but what did the Japanese do this time? They executed the envoys. I mean, there couldn't have been a clearer message that there was nothing left to talk about. So in 1281, the second invasion began. The Eastern Fleet, which was smaller, arrived first. They once again took Tsushima and Iki and headed for Hakata Bay. But this time, that stone wall did its job and didn't let them land easily. The war became very difficult and grueling. The samurai fought bravely with their small boats, launching night raids, setting Mongol ships on fire, and inflicting casualties. Samurai like Takazaki Suenaga showed great valor, jumping onto Mongol ships to fight. When the massive southern fleet arrived, the war was stuck in a stalemate for weeks. Neither side could win. It was here that the Mongols made another fatal mistake. To prevent the Japanese night raids, they chained their ships together with planks and chains to create a sort of large floating fortress. They thought this would make them safer. This move was worse than a final shot. It was a fatal error, because they had turned themselves into a giant stationary target. On August 15, 1281, a storm came again. But this one was a super typhoon, much more intense and bigger than the first. The second Kamikaze. That massive fleet, now chained together, had no way to escape. The storm destroyed them. The ships were tossed around like toys, smashed into each other, and sank. The casualties were horrific. They say up to 90% of the Mongol army was wiped out. That means tens of thousands, maybe even 100,000 men, either drowned or were killed by the Japanese when they reached the shore. This was an absolute catastrophe and the end of Kublai Khan's dream of conquering Japan. In summary, the reasons for this great failure were the fierce resistance of the Japanese and their better preparation for the second invasion, the Mongols' logistical problems, and most importantly, those two storms, or the Kamikaze. These events led the Japanese to strongly believe that their land was under divine protection, and their national identity grew much stronger. And one last interesting point. This great victory was not without its costs for Japan itself. The Kamakura government had spent so much on defense that it didn't have the money to reward the samurai who had fought. This issue caused intense dissatisfaction among the samurai and gradually weakened the government from within. So, the victory they achieved also sowed the seeds of their own destruction, a bitter historical irony.